Thanks, John. Thanks, Nexus.
You're welcome. I'm Greg, and on Stratics I usually post as Nexus or Tiberius, depending on which section of the site it is. And of course, you reached out and we made contact about your announcement on your new game that's getting ready to move into full steam development. And
Exactly.
everybody's known it as Ultimate RPG up to this point. You've released a name to us. It's Shroud of the Avatar, Forsaken Virtue.
Exactly.
And we've seen the artwork that you gave us, and it's really going back to your RPG roots. And
Absolutely.
I just wanted to see what your feelings on how it makes you feel going back to this time, because I know for me these are the games I grew up with. Your old RPGs were it's like an artwork where you had the dark dungeon crawling and stuff like that, and I wanted to see if you got the same type of feeling that it gives me.
Well, no question. Do you want me to respond to that now, or you have further questions?
No. That's the first.
Sure. Well,
just really, is that what it's for you partially?
absolutely. It's been 15 years since I stepped away from the Ultima franchise, and I've been sort of reluctant to go back and kind of what I call compete with myself. At least that was originally why I kind of stepped away. I've debated on when to come back to a traditional fantasy role-playing game, at least over the last 5 years or so. And now really just seemed like the right time to do it. I've been it's now far enough away in the past, and what's interesting about that is that I would have expected more people to build products in what I'll call the Ultima model. But in fact, most other role-playing games have been chasing the EverQuest through World of Warcraft model, I'll call them, which are all about level grinding in an MMO space. And I thought that really left me a great opportunity to, since people really hadn't built upon much, I think the great foundational work that I had done through the Ultima series, I thought if anybody can build on that, if anybody can go back to it, and if anybody can build on it, I'm the guy to do it. So that's where we started.
Yeah, I'm sure there's tons of people who are going to agree with that you're the person to do it. I mean, you were really one of the pioneers in early gaming of this type. I mean, it's really a good feeling to see someone that had such an important part of it come back to it. And one of the things that after reading over the information that we were provided, something that's pretty much been one of your trademarks is putting in a morality system into your game. And no one else does this for the most part. And, with all the stuff that's going on where, there's the fears of the public about, violence in games, stuff like that. And I think this is a really important part. And, I mean, do you consider this type of thing being, this being one of the reasons you're big on the morality system where you're encouraging people to make choices based on morals?
Absolutely. Well, in fact, that I should probably describe the reason why I started that. When I wrote Akalabeth, Ultima 1, and Ultima 2, those were published through other companies. Ultima 3 was the first game that my own company, Origin, published. And so it was the first time I got letters back from people who had played the game. And this was obviously long before the internet. And so for all the previous games, I just assumed people were playing the game the same way I would play the game that I wrote, or my friends would play it, in front of me. And as soon as I started getting letters back from people, I began to realize people are playing this completely differently than I had anticipated. And Ultimas 1 through 3 had sort of the generic role-playing game plot of you're the hero because you're told so in the instructions. Your job is to kill the bad guy who's not going to do anything other than wait for you at the end. And what players do in the meantime is they min-max their activities to become as powerful as possible, as quickly as possible, to go kill the guy that's never done anything in the game. And what they do when they're min-maxing is what I'll call morally ambiguous. They would first they'd do all the quest lines, but then they'd go kill every villager. They'd steal from every shop. They'd kill me. And I sat back and said, wait a minute, what am I really reinforcing with this gameplay? The people are not playing as the hero. And if I was one of those villagers, and the way that player was min-maxing themselves was to wipe out all my family, I probably wouldn't help them, along their journey to success. And that's what started me saying, I want to create a game, which of course became Ultima 4, where I'm going to still leave those temptations in, like they have been in all my previous games and like they are in all these other role-playing games. But since it's a computer, it knows when you're lying. It knows when you're cheating. It knows when you're being heroic or cowardly. And so it's going to keep track of all those things. And then the people who are actually searching for a hero will support you or not based upon whether you're actually role-playing as a hero.
So this is something that you're really working towards for your Shroud of the Avatar game. I know it mentioned that you're going to have a system similar to what we've seen from you in the past in it. And, so that will definitely be something you're working on.
Absolutely.
And I really enjoy that because it's like you said, everybody else has been following this EverQuest World of Warcraft model. No one else is looking at these things, and it's really important in a sense because does it give you a feeling that developers actually have a responsibility to their consumer base?
Well, what I find interesting about that is, I'm a believer that what we're creating is art, and just like in the movie industry, you can create a movie if you wish about anything you want from, murder to, to stop the murderers. You could glorify murder if you wished in a movie. There's nothing wrong with that in my mind as a piece of art. However, if what you're really trying to create is relevant literature, and in my mind, role-playing games at their best are relevant literature, then to pattern after the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey or any of the classic arcs of young potential hero who is inadequate to face the challenge of saving the world, has to learn really about themselves and overcome not just the physical obstacles in the world, but overcome their own failings in order to rise to the challenge and ultimately aspire to rescuing, saving the world, whatever it might be. That classic arc is powerful and has survived the test of time for a reason. It's because it really resonates with the human spirit, and it adds to the human spirit in an important and relevant way. And a lot of games don't do that. A lot of games really are just about, how big an explosion can I make. And fortunately, the tools and technology of today are pretty darn good, so we'll have plenty of good explosions in our game as well. The magic effects and other things will still be, high quality, state of the art. But we're going to acquire that through largely the tools that we use, which are so powerful these days. What we're going to focus our development time and our efforts on is making sure that we make one of these very handcrafted story experiences involving stories about ethical parables and virtues that are designed to reflect to you your behavior in the game.
And that's one of the beauties of a sandbox type system, where you're not locked into a class, you're not locked into a quest chain. That's another one thing that you do that no one else really invests heavily in. Right. It's just fascinating that for some reason, some things that make so much sense you've hit on in the past, and other people are like, no, this is more profitable. We're not going to, look that way.
Well, I think and as critical as I am of what I'll call the state of the art of role playing games, because I am, it didn't come without cause in my mind. I don't think it all came out of laziness, or I don't think it all came out of profiteering. And let me give you a little story arc as to why I think that's the case. And if you go back to the early Ultimas, when you would be told by one NPC to go to the town of Trinsic, speak to the woman in the red dress about her pearls. Well, you had to remember Trinsic, woman in red dress, and I have to learn to type the word pearls. So you had to go sit down and actually record a notebook, or if you came back 2 or 3 days, a week later, month later, there was effectively no chance you'd be able to pick up and complete that quest. And so people began down the path of what I'll call automation to try to expand the player base beyond the people who were willing and able to pull out a notepad and keep track of at this very, in fact, technically difficult level of note-keeping you had to keep. But what happened when they started down that path is they really went much too far. And let me describe most MMOs that are my case study for what's wrong with the state of the art. If you look at, there have been the last couple of years have seen some very large, $100 million, hundreds of team member MMOs that are beautiful, full-featured, and failed. Yeah, and in my mind, the reason why they've failed is because they fit the pattern I'm about to describe. Here is generically most multiplayer online games these days. You boot up the game, the first thing you have to do is decide what class you're going to be. You have to permanently decide if I'm going to be a fighter, a cleric, or a wizard, and what race I want to be before I've ever even seen the game. So I have no idea if I like the game, and I have no idea what I might like to be in the game, but I have to decide. Next, you have to create your character. And since you're not sure about what eye color, if you'll be able to change in the future, your eye color, hair color, everything else, you go, well, I better do it right because I may not do it again, so you spend another 30 minutes creating your character. Then finally you drop into the game after 30 minutes to an hour, and yep, you're in a beautiful town. And guess there's weapon shop, armor shop, magic shop, and a person with an exclamation point over their head that I go talk to get my quests. When you talk to them, you click on the menu items, except the ones that are obviously would piss him off, until everything's logged into your quest log. And then when you click on an item in your quest log, there's an arrow that shows up on the map that leads you directly to precisely the place or nearby the place where you can farm your level 1 monsters or other level 1 activities in order to return, and then you do level 2 and level 3 and repeat. And that is the same pattern that was started with EverQuest through World of Warcraft and every game since that I think is the real tragedy. So in our game, we don't intend to put a quest log. We're not going to put arrows down on the map. We probably will give you some form of journal so that you don't have to actually literally pull out a pad of note paper and start writing things down and do something quite that hardcore. But we already have in it, the test cases that I'm already demoing around for everybody. When you go talk to a woman who says that she has some concerns or something, she doesn't tell you that's a quest or that's a mission, please go do it. It's just up to you. If you think that's something worth following up on, go follow up. And then she may or may not notice when you come back that you took care of that thing that she was concerned about. Sometimes she will, sometimes no. She said, no, I was just having a conversation. Thanks, but not really that important to me. And in some cases, she'll be extremely thankful and give you some rewards. And so it becomes much more like a reality engine, much more like a real place that you're going to go live in and live through and get to know the people and get to know the spaces and have a real life.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the big strengths of the tabletop RPGs. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure that was probably an influence in your life at one point when you were getting into the industry. And it really is, and something that no one else has really replaced. I hear over and over, oh, this game's a World of Warcraft clone, this game's a clone of this game's a clone of that. I'm like, well, most of these cloned EverQuest in some way or another. They borrowed a lot from that. And nobody really borrowed from your work. But one thing I did notice that I'm wondering if is going to play into this sandbox element is when we were looking at the video that was provided, while this character is running through a town, I'm seeing these big open plots of land with a little flag next to it. And I'm wondering, you had mentioned housing as a possibility in a game. And I'm thinking, are players, instead of, like in other games where you find a place out in the wilderness or it's an instanced location, is this what players are going to be doing in your game? You're going to have a house in a town. And
Absolutely.
that's one
you're exactly right. And let me give you a little depth on that. So Shroud of the Avatar has a 2-scale map. There's an outdoor map and a scenario or town scale map. And the outdoor map is really for travel and then zooming in to points of instances along the way. And on the outdoor travel map, there can also be mobile instances, like a traveling gypsy wagon or a dragon circling a volcano, or your friends might be walking around on the outdoor map, or a monster group could be moving around on the outdoor map. And then just like the middle or earlier Ultimas, when you encounter a point of interest or a mobile encounter, you'll zoom in to that encounter scale map. And a town or a combat are both zoomed in to a similar kind of technology, a third-person over-the-shoulder camera. And the way housing works is, as you've surmised, we have a variety of kinds of towns and cities and villages. Villages are a little bit larger and spread out and have a lot of room for houses, but only a handful of what I'll call game-driven central services that might cause you to come in and out of it on your own. So it's a relatively cheap place to have a house, but if you want to be a blacksmith, it's not a great place to be a blacksmith because it's more of a neighborhood and farming community and not a high traffic zone. If you go to the other extreme, which is the cities compared to towns, we're going to put a lot of the fundamental infrastructure that the game will operate, whether it's auction houses or the bank or whatever it might be, so there'll be a lot of traffic in and out. But there's going to be very few plots of land. They'll be much more expensive, bigger for bigger houses if you want. And it'll be up to you, to the player, to decide, what can you afford and what are you willing to, at this point in time in your life. And you'll even be able to sell your house at one location. The house will just collapse and remove itself from the world. You can move it to another city and deploy it again, and with all your stuff and decoration, still within it.